The Galactic Council asked why Earth has so many combat sports, and the answer shocked them. Part 1. The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber sparkled under the light of 3 suns. Inside, representatives from over 200 species sat in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. The architecture was designed to inspire awe, and it worked. Commander Allison Miller still felt her breath catch every time she entered, even after 6 months as Earth's primary representative. "Stop fidgeting," she whispered to Greg Patterson, Earth's diplomatic liaison, as they took their seats in the section reserved for newly admitted species. "I can't help it," Greg whispered back, tugging at the collar of his formal uniform. These chairs were clearly not designed for human bodies. Allison smiled slightly but kept her posture perfect. Appearances mattered here. Earth had only been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council 3 months ago, and every interaction was scrutinized. Humans were the newcomers, the unknowns, and many established species remained skeptical about allowing such a young civilization into their ancient organization. The council elder, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin named Vinshar, glided to the center platform. The chamber quieted immediately. "We open the 43rd session of Cultural Exchange Discussions," Vinshar announced, voice resonating without the need for amplification. "Today we continue our exploration of member species social practices. The topic is recreational activities and their cultural significance." Representatives from various worlds took turns describing their leisure activities. The Arcturians spoke of their color meditation, where they spent days absorbing different light wavelengths. The Proxima Centauri delegation described their harmonic swimming, where entire communities created living patterns in their planet's silver oceans. Each presentation was met with thoughtful nods and occasional questions. The atmosphere was calm, academic, and cordial. Then it was Earth's turn. Greg had prepared a well-rounded presentation showing the diversity of human recreation: music, art, team sports, individual competitions, games of strategy, and outdoor pursuits. The holographic display showed scenes from across Earth: children playing soccer in Brazil, chess masters competing in Russia, surfers riding waves in Australia. The council members watched with polite interest until the presentation shifted to a segment on athletic competitions. Images appeared of boxing matches, wrestling tournaments, MMA fights, fencing bouts, and martial arts demonstrations. The calm atmosphere in the chamber changed immediately. Beings shifted in their seats, appendages waving in what Allison recognized as signs of distress. Representative Zixtar of the Andromedy, a species known for their direct approach, rose from their seat. Their 4 eyes blinked in an unsynchronized pattern that Allison had learned indicated confusion or alarm. "Point of inquiry," Zixtar called out formally. Vinshar nodded. "Recognized." The Andromedian's translator device hummed as they spoke. "Why does your species have so many formalized combat activities when you claim to be peaceful?" Greg stopped the presentation, looking uncertain. This wasn't a question they had prepared for. Allison stood. "These are sports and competitions, not actual combat. They're regulated activities with rules and safety measures. Yet they involve striking other humans, forcing them to submit, rendering them unconscious?" pressed Zixtar, gesturing with a slender blue arm toward the frozen image of a boxing match. "This appears to be ritualized violence." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Allison felt a sinking feeling. What seemed normal on Earth clearly appeared barbaric to many council species. "These activities have deep historical and cultural roots," she tried to explain. "They teach discipline, respect," interrupted another representative, this one from the Tholian Merge, a collective consciousness species. "How does attempting to physically dominate another being demonstrate respect?" More voices joined in. The Rigelian ambassador inquired if these were perhaps punishment rituals. The Menduzian chancellor wondered if they were remnants of primitive mating competitions. The Valerian delegation suggested they might be evidence that humans were still too aggressive for council membership. Greg looked at Allison with panic in his eyes. Their first major cultural presentation was spiraling into a diplomatic incident. Vinshar raised a hand for silence. It seems we have touched upon a significant cultural difference that requires deeper examination. The elder's voice remained neutral, but Allison caught the slight change in skin luminosity that indicated concern. Perhaps the human delegation could prepare a more comprehensive explanation of these practices for our next session. Of course, Elder, Allison replied, relieved at the temporary reprieve. We would be happy to provide greater context. As the session moved on to the next species, Allison and Greg exchanged worried glances. What had seemed like a simple cultural presentation had revealed a profound difference in values and perceptions. Back in their assigned quarters at the Earth Embassy section of the Council Station, Allison paced while Greg brought up files on his tablet. "This is bad," he said, running a hand through his brown hair. "I've got messages from 6 different diplomatic offices asking for clarifications about our combat rituals. The Valerians are already drafting a motion to review our provisional membership status." Allison stopped pacing. "They can't be serious. They're judging us based on a misunderstanding. To them, it's not a misunderstanding. Most council species evolved beyond physical confrontation thousands of years ago. Some never had it to begin with." Greg showed her a chart of council species' evolutionary paths. "They see these sports as evidence we're still primitive. But that's not fair. Boxing, martial arts, they're about skill and discipline as much as anything physical. Some have traditions going back thousands of years, and we know that. They don't." Greg set down his tablet. "The council has scheduled a special session in 1 week to address what they're calling a concerning cultural anomaly. We need to prepare a response that helps them understand." Allison stared out the viewport at the swirling nebula beyond the station. Earth had worked so hard for this opportunity. First contact 50 years ago, decades of proving themselves worthy of consideration, the rigorous evaluation process. And now their membership might be in jeopardy because the council didn't understand why humans punched each other for sport. "We need help," she decided. "Contact Earth. We need experts, historians, anthropologists, coaches, athletes, people who can explain what these traditions really mean to humanity." "And if they still don't understand?" Greg asked quietly. Allison turned from the view of the stars. "Then we make them understand. Because this isn't just about sport anymore. It's about whether the council truly accepts humans as we are, not just the parts of us that resemble them." As she sent the urgent request to Earth, Allison couldn't help wondering what other aspects of human life might seem alien to their new galactic neighbors. This was just the beginning of a much longer conversation about what it meant to be human in a universe of diversity. The Galactic Council asked why Earth has so many combat sports, and the answer shocked them. Part 2. The small shuttle broke through Earth's atmosphere, its smooth silver hull glinting in the sunlight. Inside, cultural anthropologist Kel Nar watched through the viewing port with all 4 of her eyes wide open. She had studied thousands of worlds in her 200 years as a council researcher, but this was her first visit to Earth. "We will land in Philadelphia in 5 minutes, announced the pilot. "Your human guide is waiting at the landing pad." Kelnar's skin shifted to a pale yellow, indicating her mix of excitement and anxiety. The council had sent her to investigate human combat sports after the concerning cultural presentation. Her report would influence the final decision on Earth's membership status. The shuttle touched down gently on a landing pad outside the city. As the door slid open, Kelnar adjusted her environmental suit. Although Earth's atmosphere was breathable for her species, she preferred to minimize exposure to unfamiliar microbes. A human male stood waiting. He was tall, with dark skin and a friendly smile. He wore what her research indicated was formal, academic clothing, a blazer with patches on the elbows. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Dr. Sam Washington, sports historian from Stanford University," he said, offering a slight bow instead of a handshake, respecting her cultural preferences. "I'll be your guide during your investigation." "Thank you for your welcome," Kelnar replied through her translator. "I look forward to understanding your combat rituals." "We call them sports or martial arts, not combat rituals," Sam corrected, gently. Our first stop is a boxing gym just a few miles from here. I think it's important you see these activities firsthand. Their vehicle moved through Philadelphia's streets. Kelnar observed humans walking, talking, eating, so many typical behaviors shared across sentient species. Yet these same creatures apparently engaged in formalized fighting for recreation. The contradiction fascinated her. The boxing gym was in an old brick building with faded lettering above the door. Inside, the air smelled of sweat and leather. Several rings were set up where pairs of humans wore padded gloves and struck at each other, while others watched and called out advice. In other areas, humans hit hanging bags or jumped rope or lifted weights. This is Porter's Gym, one of the oldest boxing clubs in America, Sam explained. It's been training fighters for over 70 years. Kelnar watched a young woman and young man sparring in one of the rings. The woman moved fluidly, blocking punches and delivering her own. The man nodded in approval when she landed a particularly good hit. They are trying to harm each other? Kelnar asked. No, they're practicing technique. Notice the protective headgear, the padded gloves, the coach watching carefully. This is controlled training. An older man approached them. His face had scars above his eyes, and his nose had clearly been broken at least once. This is Joe Porter, the gym owner and former middleweight champion, Sam said. You're the alien researcher? Joe asked directly. When Kelnar nodded, he continued, Let me show you what this place is really about. Joe led them past the main training area to a smaller room where about 15 young humans, some barely into their teenage years, sat in a circle on the floor. Before anyone trains in my gym, they sit here, Joe explained. We talk about respect, discipline, self-control. Boxing isn't about hurting people. It's about learning what your body can do, what your mind can handle. For a lot of these kids, it's the first place they learn to believe in themselves. One of the young humans in the circle, a girl with curly hair pulled back tightly, spoke up. Before I started boxing, I was afraid of everything. Now I know I can protect myself. I'm not afraid anymore. Kelnar's skin rippled with blue patterns, her species' indication of deep thought. This was not what she had expected. Later that day, they visited 3 more locations: a wrestling program at a local college, a karate dojo, and a community center offering self-defense classes. At each stop, Kelnar observed, took notes, and asked questions. By evening, they sat at a quiet restaurant where Sam had ordered food safe for both of them. You've been quiet since the community center, Sam noted. Kelnar's skin swirled with patterns of green and blue. I am processing. The council views these activities as evidence of continued human aggression, but what I observed today was more complex. How so? Sam asked. At the wrestling facility, I saw competitors embrace after trying to physically dominate each other. At the karate school, students bowed to each other with genuine respect. And at the community center, her skin flushed, deep violet with emotion. Those women were learning to defend themselves against actual violence. Sam nodded. Combat sports aren't about promoting violence. They're often about controlling it, channeling it, understanding it. Yet the physical nature remains. The intent to strike, to throw, to submit. Yes, Sam agreed. We can't deny the physical component, but that's just one part of it. Kelnar consulted her notes. The Galactic Council has requested we visit other locations worldwide. I need a more comprehensive sample. I've arranged everything. Tomorrow we fly to Tokyo for a major judo competition, then to Rio de Janeiro for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Paris for fencing, and finally Las Vegas for a mixed martial arts event. This investigation will take 3 weeks of Earth time, Kelnar stated. My report is due immediately after. And what will you tell them? Sam asked, curious. Kelnar's skin pulsed slowly between yellow and blue. I do not know yet. Today, I saw things that contradict the Council's assumptions, but also behaviors that would disturb many member species. I need more information. As they finished their meal, a news alert appeared on Sam's phone. He frowned as he read it. What is it? Kelnar asked. The Valerian delegation has formally requested your investigation be expedited. They're pushing for a decision on Earth's membership status within the month. Kelnar's skin darkened. That is not enough time for a proper cultural assessment. They're not interested in a proper assessment, Sam said quietly. The Valerians have opposed Earth's membership from the beginning. They see this as an opportunity to block us permanently. That would be against Council principles, Kelnar stated, her voice firm. A full and fair evaluation is required. Then, we need to make the most of these 3 weeks, Sam replied. There's a lot more to show you. That night in her temporary quarters, Kelnar reviewed her notes and recordings from the day. She watched footage of the young humans training, the careful instruction, the smiles and high fives after intense physical exertion. She added a note to her preliminary report. Human combat sports contain contradictions not easily classified, under Standard Council cultural metrics. Further investigation is essential before any conclusions can be drawn. She sent the message to the Council, knowing it would not satisfy the Valerians or others who had already made up their minds. But science demanded thoroughness, and Kelnar was nothing if not thorough. She would not render judgment until she understood. No matter what political pressures existed, tomorrow would bring new observations, new contradictions to untangle. As a cultural anthropologist, Kelnar found herself facing the most fascinating puzzle of her career: how a species could embrace peace while practicing the arts of war. The Galactic Council asked why Earth has so many combat sports, and the answer shocked them. Part 3. The Grand Council chamber hummed with tension. Representatives from over 200 worlds shifted in their seats, waiting for the special hearing to begin. Commander Allison Miller and Greg Patterson sat at the Earth delegation table, both trying to appear calm despite their nerves. 3 weeks had passed since cultural anthropologist Kelnar began her investigation of Earth's combat sports. Her final report sat sealed on the central podium, waiting to be presented. The contents would significantly influence Earth's standing in the galactic community. Beside Allison sat Dr. Olivia Daniels, Earth's premier military historian. She wore her university robes and had brought several ancient artifacts: a Greek boxing glove, Japanese training weapons, and Olympic medals, to show during her testimony. The Valerians looked confident, Greg whispered, glancing at the delegation across the chamber. The tall, gray-skinned beings with their ridge-lined faces showed the slight mouth twitches that passed for smiles in their species. They think they've already won, Allison replied quietly. Let's prove them wrong. The chamber lights dimmed, and Elder Vinchar glided to the central platform, the iridescent being raised 4 slender arms for silence. We convene this special session to address the cultural evaluation of Earth's combat practices, Vinchar announced. The findings will inform our final decision on Earth's permanent membership status. The Elder gestured to a side entrance. First, we will hear from our own investigator. Kelnar entered, her skin cycling through formal patterns of blue and gold. She carried herself with the dignity of her scientific position, placing her data crystals on the reader before speaking. Honorable Council, I have spent 3 Earth weeks studying their combat sports across multiple locations and disciplines. I have observed training sessions, competitions, and spoken with practitioners of all ages. Her voice was measured, giving no hint of her conclusions. My full report has been submitted for Council review. However, I must note that 3 weeks is insufficient time for complete cultural analysis. My findings should be considered preliminary only. The Valerian head representative, Drath, rose immediately. The Council thanks you for your diligence, Researcher Kelnar, but we have sufficient evidence already. These humans formalize violent behavior as entertainment. This alone should disqualify. That is not your determination to make, Representative Drath. Elder Vinchar interrupted, skin flashing warning patterns. We will follow proper procedure. The Elder turned to the Earth delegation. You may present your case. Allison stood. The Council has requested explanation about an aspect of human culture that has been misunderstood. To provide historical context, I present Dr. Olivia Daniels, Professor of Military and Cultural History at Oxford University. Olivia approached the central platform, carrying a small wooden box. Her steps were steady, her expression serious, but not defensive. She had advised world leaders and taught thousands of students over her career. This was just another lecture, with much higher stakes. Honored council members, she began in a clear voice. To understand why humans have combat sports, you must understand where we came from. She opened the box and activated a small projector. Three-dimensional images appeared in the air above the platform. Ancient cave paintings showing hunters, battles, and ritualized combat. From our earliest days, humans had to fight for food, for territory, for survival against predators. Unlike some species represented here, we did not evolve with natural weapons or defenses. We had to develop them. She showed images spanning human history: Greek wrestlers, Roman gladiators, medieval knights, Japanese samurai, and modern soldiers. For most of our existence, combat skills meant survival. Those who could fight well protected their communities. But something interesting happened. Even in times of peace, we continued practicing these skills. The Mendusian chancellor interrupted. This only proves humans remain fixated on their violent past. Olivia nodded respectfully. That was my first hypothesis too, Chancellor. But the evidence suggests something more complex. She changed the projection to show ancient Olympics, medieval tournaments, and early boxing matches. Boxing and wrestling were practiced in ancient Greece as Olympic events, celebrating athletic excellence while developing skills useful for warfare. Eastern martial arts began as survival techniques but evolved to emphasize discipline, respect, and spiritual growth. She displayed images of modern dojos where students bowed to each other, coaches teaching young boxers, and Paralympic martial arts competitions. Throughout human history, combat sports have served 5 crucial functions beyond violence: physical training, mental discipline, cultural tradition, controlled conflict resolution, and social bonding. The council chamber remained quiet as Olivia continued. Consider this paradox. As humanity became more peaceful globally, interest in combat sports increased. Why? Because these activities provide benefits that humans need: challenge, mastery, discipline, while the negative aspects of actual combat are removed. The Arcturan delegate raised a tentacle. But humans still get injured in these activities. We have seen broken bones, concussions. Yes, Olivia acknowledged. Risk exists, as it does in many physical activities. But we have steadily made these sports safer with rules, protective equipment, and medical supervision. Olivia then showed brain scans and medical data. Research demonstrates that structured combat training develops neural pathways that improve focus, emotional regulation, and stress management. For many humans, particularly youth, these activities provide structure and confidence that helps them avoid actual violent behavior. A low murmur spread through the chamber as council members discussed this information among themselves. The Valerian representative Drath stood again. This justification is inadequate. Other species had violent, evolutionary pasts but abandoned such practices centuries ago. Humans cling to these primitive behaviors because they remain primitive. The chamber grew tense. This was the core accusation that threatened Earth's standing. Olivia remained calm. With respect, Representative, that perspective misunderstands both human psychology and cultural evolution. We haven't failed to evolve past these practices. We've evolved them into something different from their origins. She showed final images. A young woman in a self-defense class gaining confidence, elderly practitioners performing Tai Chi for health, children learning respect through martial arts training. Humans don't practice combat sports because we glorify violence, but because we have transformed potentially destructive instincts into constructive activities. Rather than deny our evolutionary heritage, we've channeled it. Olivia returned to her seat. The council members turned to each other discussing her presentation with animated gestures and expressions. Elder Vinshar raised a hand for silence. The council will now question cultural anthropologist Kel Nar about her findings before deliberation. As the questioning began, Allison leaned toward Olivia. You did well, but I can't tell if you changed any minds. Neither can I, Olivia admitted quietly. The gap between our perspectives may be too wide. Greg checked his tablet and frowned. The Valerian delegation is already drafting a statement opposing our membership. They're determined to use this against us. Allison watched Kel-Nar answering questions, her skin patterns shifting with each response. The anthropologist was being careful, scientific, not showing bias, but also not providing the clear defense Earth needed. We need more than words, Allison whispered. They need to experience it themselves. What are you thinking? Greg asked. Allison's eyes lit up with sudden inspiration. A demonstration, not just explaining our combat sports, but showing what they truly mean. As the questioning of Kel-Nar continued, Allison began drafting a proposal on her tablet. It was risky, unprecedented, but it might be Earth's only chance. The Galactic Council asked why Earth has so many combat sports, and the answer shocked them. Part 4. This is unprecedented, Elder Vinchar said, skin shimmering with patterns of surprise and concern. No species has ever requested a practical demonstration during a cultural evaluation. The council chamber had cleared except for the senior members and Earth representatives. Allison Miller stood before them, having just proposed her bold idea. I understand this is unusual, Allison replied, but this situation requires more than words. We invite council representatives to experience modified training sessions in various Earth combat disciplines. Only through participation can you truly understand what these activities mean to humans. The Arcturan delegate waved its tentacles nervously. You expect us to engage in physical combat? Not combat, Greg Patterson clarified quickly. Basic movements, breathing techniques, stances, all adapted for your physiologies and cultural comfort. No contact unless specifically requested. HFY. Council members looked at each other uncertainly. The Valerian representative Drath made a dismissive gesture. This is clearly a distraction tactic. The humans realize their justifications have failed, so now they attempt this performance. Kel-Nar, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. As a cultural anthropologist, I must note that experiential learning provides data that observation alone cannot. The proposal has scientific merit. After much discussion, Elder Vinchar announced the decision. We will permit this demonstration on a voluntary basis. Any council member who wishes may participate. The session will be held tomorrow in the station's main recreation hall. As the council members filed out, Greg turned to Allison. Well, we got approval. Now we just need to convince them to actually show up. Allison nodded. And we need the right instructor. Someone who can connect with different species and make them understand. I know exactly who to call, Olivia said with a small smile. The recreation hall had been transformed overnight. Exercise mats covered the floor. Racks of training equipment, modified for various body types, lined the walls. Soft lighting and gentle earth music created a calm atmosphere. Kevin Turner stood in the center, barefoot on the mat. He wore traditional white GI pants and a black t-shirt with the words Global Martial Arts Federation across the chest. His gray hair was cut short, and the laugh lines around his eyes deepened as he smiled at the small group entering the hall. Kevin had spent 40 years teaching martial arts across Earth. He had adapted his teaching for children, elderly students, and people with physical disabilities. Now he faced his greatest teaching challenge, beings from completely different worlds. To Allison's relief, about 15 council representatives had decided to attend. The Valerians were notably absent. Welcome, Kevin said warmly. I'm honored by your presence. Before we begin, I want to establish that this session is about exploration, not performance. There is no failure here, only learning. His words were translated through the council's systems. The representatives shifted uncertainly, some moving their various appendages in nervous gestures. We'll start with something universal, breathing, Kevin continued. Every living being breathes in some way. Breathing connects mind and body. He demonstrated a simple breathing pattern. Please adapt this to your own respiratory systems. The pattern matters more than the method. Hesitantly, the representatives began following along. The Tholian ambassador, a crystalline being who absorbed gases through its surface, pulsed gently in rhythm. The Rigelian envoy expanded and contracted its chest cavity. Even the Mendusian chancellor, known for her skepticism, synchronized her, gill flaps to the pattern. "Excellent," Kevin said. "Now we'll add gentle movement." Over the next hour, Kevin guided them through basic elements from various earth disciplines. The Tholian learned flowing movements from Tai Chi. The Rigelian practiced stable stances from karate. The Arcturan delegate, despite initial reluctance, found its tentacles well suited to the circular blocks of Aikido. Kevin adapted each exercise to the being's unique physiologies, always emphasizing the principles behind the movements rather than perfect execution. "In martial arts," he explained as they practiced, "we learn to understand our own bodies, to move with intention rather than reaction. This self-awareness extends beyond physical training." The Mendusian chancellor, after completing a sequence of movements, spoke up. "This requires significant mental focus. I had not anticipated that." "Yes," Kevin agreed. "The mental discipline often exceeds the physical challenge. Many humans practice these arts primarily for the mental benefits." After basic movements, Kevin introduced simple partner exercises, carefully matching species who could safely interact. They practiced maintaining proper distance, reading body language, and moving in coordination rather than opposition. "Notice how you must pay complete attention to your partner," Kevin instructed. "You learn to read intentions to anticipate movement. This builds connection and understanding." The atmosphere in the hall had changed. The initial tension had given way to curiosity and engagement. Several representatives were asking questions, requesting to try different movements. The Arcturan delegate, who had been practicing a defensive stance, raised a tentacle. "I observed that these movements could cause harm if executed differently, yet we are performing them without harm occurring. This seems contradictory." Kevin nodded. "That's an insightful observation. The same movement can defend or attack. The intention makes the difference. In training, we learn control over both movement and intention." The Mendusian chancellor completed a flowing sequence, then turned to Kevin. "I begin to understand. This is not about harming, but about knowing oneself and respecting one's partner." "Exactly," Kevin said with a smile. "The external form is just the beginning. The internal transformation is the true purpose." As the session continued, Ambassador Zix Tar of the Andromeda, who had asked the original question about Earth's combat sports, approached Allison at the edge of the room. "Commander Miller, this experience has been informative. However, I must note that what we are doing here bears little resemblance to the boxing and fighting competitions shown in your cultural presentation." Allison nodded. "You're right. This is just the foundation, the principles and philosophy behind the practice. The competitive aspects evolved from these basics. But the violence remains in those competitions," Zixtar pressed. "The intensity increases, yes," Allison acknowledged, "but the principles remain. Two boxers in a ring are still following rules, showing respect and demonstrating skills they've spent years developing." The Andromedians' four eyes blinked in their unsynchronized pattern. "Many council species will find it difficult to reconcile violence with respect." "I understand that," Allison said, "but I hope this demonstration helps show that what appears to be simple violence from the outside is something much more complex from within the tradition." As the session concluded, Kevin guided everyone through a final breathing exercise. The representatives stood or floated in a circle, each following the rhythm in their own biological way. "Thank you for your openness today," Kevin said. "In my 40 years of teaching, I've found that martial arts build bridges between different people. Today, they've built bridges between different worlds." The representatives bowed or made their species gestures of respect before departing. Many approached Kevin with questions or comments, their body language showing genuine interest. Allison, Greg, and Olivia watched from the side of the room. "I think we made some progress," Greg said cautiously. "With some of them, yes," Olivia agreed. "But the Valerians weren't even here, and they're our strongest opposition." Allison watched as the Mendusian chancellor spoke earnestly with Kevin. We've given them something to think about at least, but will it be enough? As the last representatives left the hall, Elder Vinchar approached the Earth delegation. The Elder's skin glowed with complex patterns that were difficult to interpret. An interesting approach, Commander Miller, Vinchar said. The Council will reconvene tomorrow for final deliberations on this matter. And our membership status? Allison asked. The Elder's skin shifted to a neutral pattern. That remains to be determined. Much still depends on tomorrow's session. As Vinchar glided away, Allison felt both hope and anxiety. They had done everything possible to help the Council understand this aspect of human culture. Now they could only wait for judgment. The Galactic Council asked why Earth has so many combat sports, and the answer shocked them. Part 5. The final council session was about to begin when urgent news spread through the station. Two species, the Draconians and Silesians, had broken their century-long peace treaty. Diplomatic channels had failed. Ancient hostilities had reignited. War seemed inevitable. Emergency alerts sounded throughout the council station. The scheduled deliberation about Earth's membership was immediately postponed as representatives rushed to address this crisis. Allison, Greg, and Olivia found themselves pulled into an emergency meeting with Elder Vinchar and senior council diplomats. Though Earth's status remained provisional, the humans' diplomatic experience was valued. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, Vinchar explained, skin patterns showing deep concern. The Draconian fleet has moved to their border. The Silesians have activated their defense grid. The Mendusian Chancellor displayed holographic star maps showing both species' military positions. If full conflict erupts, it could spread to neighboring systems. What triggered this? Allison asked, studying the maps. A disputed mining moon, the Arcturan delegate explained. Rich in rare elements. Both claim ancestral rights. Typical resource conflict, Olivia murmured. Earth has had thousands of these. How have previous disputes between these species been resolved? Greg asked. The Tholian ambassador's crystalline form dimmed slightly. The last major conflict lasted 12 years and ended with a negotiated settlement after billions of lives were lost. Silence fell over the room. The cost of failure was unimaginable. Various council species offered solutions based on their own cultural practices. The Arcturans suggested complex trade agreements. The Rigelians proposed dividing the moon exactly in half. The Tholians recommended abandoning the moon entirely as a nature preserve. Both the Draconians and Silesians rejected every proposal. Old hatreds ran too deep for conventional diplomacy. Allison listened to the increasingly desperate suggestions, an idea forming in her mind. She thought about the past weeks, the confusion over Earth's combat sports, the demonstration with Kevin, the principles they had tried to explain. I have a suggestion, she said finally, but it's unorthodox. All eyes and sensory organs turned toward her. Instead of traditional negotiation, what if we create a competition? A modified tournament based on Earth's martial arts principles. Both species select representatives to compete under strict rules with safety measures. The outcome determines mining rights. The room erupted in confused reactions. Some representatives found the idea absurd. Others were intrigued. You propose to solve a potential war with organized combat? The Mendusian Chancellor asked incredulously. Not combat, Allison clarified. A competition based on skill, not violence, with respect as its foundation. Elder Vinchar's skin displayed patterns indicating deep thought. The very practices we've been questioning as evidence of human primitivism, you now suggest as a diplomatic tool? Yes, Allison said firmly. Throughout Earth's history, cultures have used ritual competitions to resolve conflicts without full-scale war. It's why many combat sports evolved. The council debated heatedly. Some argued the proposal would simply encourage violence. Others saw potential in channeling aggression into a structured format. Even if we agreed, the Tholian ambassador pointed out, would the Draconians and Silesians accept such an unusual approach? To everyone's surprise, the junior ambassadors from both species, who had remained silent during the conventional diplomatic discussions, spoke up. "Our people respect strength and skill," the young Draconian representative said. "A contest of champions has historical precedent in our ancient traditions. Silesian history also contains ritual competitions," added their younger diplomat. "Before we became a spacefaring civilization, our tribal disputes were often settled this way." The senior diplomats from both species appeared shocked at their junior's intervention, but did not immediately reject the idea. Working through the night, Kevin Turner and Council sports specialists designed a competition framework. They borrowed elements from various Earth martial arts, adapting them for Draconian and Silesian physiologies. Safety protocols were paramount. Emphasis was placed on skill and respect rather than dominance. To Allison's relief, both species tentatively agreed to the proposal. Perhaps they saw it as preferable to war, or perhaps the cultural memory of ritual competition still resonated with them. The tournament was quickly arranged in the station's largest public space. Council species gathered to witness this unprecedented diplomatic experiment. The atmosphere was tense but hopeful. Before the competition began, Kevin insisted that all participants train together for one day. Initially reluctant, the Draconians and Silesians gradually engaged with the process. They learned techniques, practiced controlled movements, and, most importantly, began to see each other as individuals rather than hereditary enemies. When the actual competition began, it wasn't the brutal spectacle many had feared. The bouts were intense but disciplined. Competitors demonstrated remarkable skill. After each match, winners and losers acknowledged each other respectfully, following Earth protocols. The final bout featured the champions from each species. The Draconian fighter with scale-covered limbs and impressive strength faced the quick, nimble Silesian opponent. Their contest was beautiful in its complexity: attack and defense, advance and retreat, strength against speed. When the Silesian champion finally won by a small margin, the Draconian bowed in acknowledgement of skill. The gesture, so small yet so significant, rippled through the watching crowds. Later, diplomats from both species signed a new treaty. The Silesians received primary mining rights for 50 years, after which they would transfer to the Draconians for the same period. Additionally, both agreed to joint scientific missions and cultural exchanges. As the crisis subsided, the Council returned to its previously scheduled business, including Earth's membership evaluation. Elder Vinchar reconvened the session with a notably different tone. Recent events have provided unexpected context for our deliberations about Earth's cultural practices. The Elder turned to Kelnar, who presented her final report. Her skin now displayed confident patterns of blue and gold. After thorough investigation, including recent observations of human combat sports principles applied to diplomatic conflict resolution, I find these practices not to be evidence of primitive behavior, but rather sophisticated cultural tools that transform aggressive instincts into constructive activities. Even Representative Drath of the Valerians seemed subdued, making only token objections. When the Council voted, the result was unanimous. Earth would receive full membership status. After the session, Elder Vinchar approached the Earth delegation privately. The Elder's skin glowed with patterns Allison had never seen before. "We must acknowledge our error," Vinchar said. "We viewed your combat sports as evidence you were still too aggressive for Council membership. Now we understand they represent something quite different. Your species' unique approach to managing the aggressive instincts all sentient beings possess in some form. We don't deny our evolutionary heritage," Allison explained. "We channel it. Where most Council species sought to suppress our primal natures, you transformed yours," Vinchar observed. "Perhaps there is wisdom in this approach we had not considered." 2 weeks later, the Council announced the creation of a galactic cultural sports exchange program, with Earth designated as its primary architect. What had begun as a potential barrier to Earth's acceptance had become a bridge between species. As Sam Washington prepared to welcome the first alien students to his introductory martial arts class, he smiled at Kelnar, who had decided to remain on Earth as a cultural liaison. Who would have thought, he said, that teaching aliens to punch each other would lead to galactic peace? Kelnar's skin rippled with the patterns that indicated amusement. Sometimes the oldest solutions work for the newest problems. As they watched representatives from a dozen worlds step onto the training mats, Sam nodded. That might be the most human insight you've had yet.